Welcome back to Screenfish Radio. I am so glad you could join us today as we are talking about John Wick Chapter 4. And when you're talking about someone as iconic as Keanu Reeves, you bring in iconic guests. And this week, I am so thrilled to have the man, the myth, the legend, David Peck, and the iconic Adam Kline. Welcome back, gentlemen. I'm so glad to have you back on the show.
Like you're overselling.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's good. It's good to be back. What is it? Third appearance, I think, Steve.
I honestly, I've lost count. So it could be three. I can't count past two. So
there's three kinds of people in this world: those who can count and those who can't. Adam, nice to meet you.
That was nice to meet you too. Yep.
Hey, but I will say this. I was going to say this later, but I'm glad that we're talking about counting. I have something exciting that I haven't told the both of you yet, and I have done a bit of counting myself. It turns out that this episode is number 195 of Screenfish Radio. We are approaching 200.
Wow,
nice.
Which is very exciting considering we didn't know we were going to make it to 10 back in 2000.
Well, you know what? Congratulations, Steve. Seriously, congratulations, because I think it is a challenging world to actually commit to these types of things. It's easy to say I'm going to do this thing called a podcast, and so many of them, as we know, millions of them out there. But how many people actually stay the course? So well done, and that's something worth celebrating. So will we be expecting a gift in the mail, Adam and I, or
you can expect whatever you want.
My expectations are very high.
Yeah. Well, this is the penultimate ultimate episode, so
nice.
I mean, this is the most important one. So
exactly. So I deserve a gift that's at least 5 levels lower than what I'm expecting. Yes. I think that's like maybe an empty bottle of scotch would be nice.
Just recycling.
Yeah.
Get the deposit
or maybe
back.
Just the label. Just send me the label, Steve.
That's great.
Well, on that note, I'm excited about that, though. I appreciate that.
It's super cool, man. Really celebrate that. That is worth celebrating. That is no easy task.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what we're going to do for 200, but we're going to do something fun as well. In as that is approaching,
like maybe a fun guest or a fun film or maybe a few guests or not sure yet.
I'm honestly not sure yet.
Yeah.
But I feel like I can actually say that we're this close. Like, and it's kind of funny because I've been thinking a lot about it, and I'm like, oh, we're at 195, and Adam, you joke about it being the penultimate episode. What I'm excited about was episode 201, and it's not because I have something planned for 201, but it's 100. It's cool to get to 200.
Yeah.
But we're planning on keeping going. It's just I honestly and. That's just Screenfish Radio. Like these conversations have been happening for a while, so I'm excited, and thank you guys for being here. It's really really.
You're welcome. You might even do something as festivious says, Screenfish episode 200 Parabellum, and just put a random title on it, something like that. That might be a fun thing to do.
Change every single time, you mean? Yeah.
And then chapter 201. You just move on from there and forget about it.
What was chapter 2 called? Chapter 3.
Nothing. It was nothing. It was John Wick chapter 2, John Wick chapter 3, Parabellum, John Wick chapter 4.
And now apparently chapter 5, I heard out of the gate, was not being considered, but now there's some people are in discussions. I wonder who those people are.
I have no doubt based on and. But anyway, we're going to start talking about this show. So before we do, for those of you who are unaware, John Wick Chapter 4 continues the epic saga of John Wick, played by Keanu Reeves, who now has a price on his head that is ever increasing. The legendary hitman takes his fight against the high table global as he seeks out the most powerful players in the underworld, from New York to Paris to Japan to Berlin. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers, and this is a John Wick movie that has spoilers. The other ones were less spoilery, if you will, but this one actually has spoilers. But gentlemen, I need to know what you thought of John Wick Chapter 4, Parabellum, Parallax.
That's what I was waiting for, though. I was waiting for the rated S for spoilers just before we started mentioning Chapter 5 and all that stuff. I'll just say too, on that note of spoilers and looking ahead, like I was caught off guard, and I don't know if it was part of their planning, and they haven't said that it was part of their planning in interviews, but I know, and I went back and researched to make sure I wasn't crazy. I know that Lionsgate originally had greenlit 4 and 5. And so the way that 4 ends, I was like, wait, what's happening right now? Which was, whatever to their, and I mean, I've heard the director Chad, talk about how there was no plan for multiple stories at the same time. Like they just want to take one at a time, and that's brilliant and beautiful. But to answer your actual question about how did I enjoy it, in all honesty, like that surprise of the ending kind of elevated my enjoyment. I mean, I love the film. John Wick Chapter 4 is just, I mean, almost unmatched in terms of entertainment value, and unprecedented in what we see on screen. But the ending really pushed it for me, because I don't know if it is the ending, but it felt very satisfying to me. And
Adam, do you mean and I really want to answer the question too, Steve, but Adam, do you mean the ending or the post-credit scene? Because everyone should know they should stick around.
Right, they should stick around, and I guess I'm beating around the bush when I don't need to, because we're rated S for spoilers. But no, just the fact that John Wick dies at the end.
What?
Supposedly.
We haven't seen it, Adam.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, we're like a month after release, and we're like, just by the way.
Well, that's the beautiful thing, right? Because my wife and I, Elizabeth and I, who saw it, she sometimes will go to certain types of movies with me because I ask, and because she wants to experience them with me. But I think she probably watched at least 30% of it either asleep or with her eyes closed. So, but we get in the car and we're like, so is almost the first question after, did you enjoy it? What did you think? Is there a number 5? Is he really dead? And the way it's just so, I mean, come on, this has got to be one of the most stylish films I've seen in a long time. I think it puts a lot of other stylish films in italics to shame, to be honest with you. I mean, it's so well done. And what's going to be super interesting is in 20 years when we do episode 900 of Screenfish, Steve, and we look back on this film, will it still stand up, right? Will it stand the test of time from a special effects perspective and just from along the lines of cinematography? But yeah, I'm with Adam. I thought it was amazing. I can't wait to see it again. You need to definitely bring some rags to soak up a bit of the blood and maybe wear a bulletproof vest, but other than that, yeah, there's something about it. And for me, it is the epitome of the modern day Western. I mean, from the opening sequence and the opening shots, I just couldn't help but think of Clint Eastwood in Pale Rider or High Plains Drifter. Do you remember High Plains Drifter? That whole, and hell followed with him, right? And the preacher's coming to town. You better lock your doors. But there's something about John Wick that, I don't know, I empathize with him. I really do. And I find that really fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. But short answer is love the film. And yeah, and Adam, I think you touched on it for me too. It's a real interesting mix, but it's super entertaining. And I personally, I thought it really clipped along at, what is it, 2 hours and 55 minutes? A little extreme, but I thought it clipped along.
Well, I'll tell you this, that a few weeks or a couple weeks before it was released, I was rewatching 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, 1, 2, and 3 Parabellum. But and while watching, I IMDb'd, the 4th one. I always try to avoid any information or spoiler. I don't even most of the time, not all the time, but I try to avoid trailers. I just at the point in my life now where I just want to be delighted, and and surprised, right? Anyways, I saw the runtime on IMDb a couple weeks ahead of time, and I literally was like out loud, I was like, oh no, like that is a, like, just we're at that stage in Hollywood right now where that's a red flag, or it's a yellow flag at least, because it can really go either way, because we're in this era where auteurs are being given, maybe not blank checks, but they're whatever, there's very long leash, and that can be better in some cases, and that could be worse, I think, in most cases, because there's no restraint. Anyways, that was my initial reaction. All that to say, the greatest sin for me going to the cinema is to be bored.
It's to be bored. I would say it's pretty high
I
on my
will
list too.
absolutely. I am angry. If you bore me a little bit, I can get through it and move on. If you bore me halfway through your movie, I will sit through the movie. I never walk out, but I will be angry that I am bored with this thing. And so going into this thing, I wondered about that, and I was worried. But here's the truth, is that in almost any other movie, especially any other action movie, where a fight sequence, a long drawn out fight sequence, starts to go on, in most action films, you're like, it takes you out of it, and you're like, this is too long. And like, what's the motivation for this to be so long? In this film, it happens 7 times where an action sequence goes on, and then you think it's over, and then it keeps going, and then you think it's over, and then someone new enters the room, and I'm thrilled the entire time. I'm never bored. And that is a massive testament to the skill and the craft and the care that goes into this thing, because in all honesty, the track record of cinema and action movies, it makes no sense. It shouldn't be this entertaining. And for the sequences that go on and on, whether it's the kitchen that just felt like it kept going and going and going, or the stairs at the end that just kept going and going and going.
The stairs are awesome.
The only moment I would have taken out of the movie was thinking, I'm not bored. I'm delighted that this is continuing on. And that, anyways, that just makes it I appreciate it all the more and love it for that reason.
I think, and this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think all 4 have been directed by Chad Stahelski. And my understanding is that Stahelski was Reeves's stuntman in the Matrix films.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what these films have evolved into, and I'm not a big fan of the first one. I know some people that say the first one is the best one. I don't know how they justify that. You say that?
I love the first one. I don't know if I'd say it's the best one, but I love the first one.
We should come back to that, because I'm with you, Steve.
And I saw Jimmy Fallon say that just a few nights ago. I watched a rerun, and he said the same thing. And I said to Elizabeth, I said, yeah, a lot of people kind of poo-poo the first John Wick, but for me, it struck a chord.
Okay, I should clarify. I didn't think it was bad.
Right. Oh, yeah. Right.
I thought that because of the tone of it, like, to me, it was, we need another franchise for an aging middle-aged man, because at the time, I think this owes a ton to Taken, and Taken is nothing like this film, nothing like it. But it's what saved Liam Neeson, and after that, we started getting a lot more of the one-person, middle-aged person hitman on the run. We started getting Atomic Blonde. Nobody came later. We started getting more and more of these. In the middle of this is John Wick. And I think the first one was like, let's just make a revenge movie for Keanu Reeves. There's discussion of the high table, the Continental's in it. But it's really just grounded in this, I got to get revenge on the people that, take out my anger of the death of my wife on the mob. It's the second one where it goes, and the world, it's like they open the barn doors and the world is huge. And that's one of the reasons I think the second one and the fourth one, the second one, maybe the fourth one, but I really love the second one because it really told a story. But I'm not saying I hated the first one, not at all. It's fun. I didn't think it would do this. So I expect is it to become $1 billion franchise.
Yeah, right.
You're saying everything I'm sure that
I'm sure they didn't think so either.
I'm sure they didn't. But going back to the idea that Stahelski has framed all of these films, not as cinematographer, for film people out there, I know he directed them. Every one of them, especially from the second one on, has made reference to some other art form or storytelling. And it amazes me every time because the second one opens with a clip from, I think it's Modern Times. I might be wrong.
No, it's Buster Keaton General.
Buster Keaton, that's what it is.
Yeah.
There's no reason for it. There's
Yeah.
no reason for it other than the fact that it's like, okay, this is the type of movie we're making. It's a physical film. You're going to watch it in awe. The third movie, it's a ballerina, and now of course they're doing ballerina. Which, side note, the one thing that frustrates me about this movie is that they announced ages ago that he's in ballerina. So it's like, okay.
Oh.
He's talked about being in ballerina because they were shooting it before they did this one.
Oh.
And then this one, it was the westerns. There's a lot of talk about the westerns and samurai films, and I'm like, there's something about this franchise where each entry is it's almost like it's thanking other types of things. So it's not, I mean, the visuals harken back to so many different things. I think the ballerina one is really telling because this is dancing with weapons, or at least that's way I view it. But it doesn't work if you don't have a person you care about. And David, you said something very interesting. You empathize with the guy.
Yeah, I really do. I really do, and this sort of connects maybe to my my love of the first film because it echoes for me Die Hard, and in the sense that you've got John McClane, this guy that will do anything to prove his love for his wife. I mean, and a motif in Die Hard that has stuck with me for all these years is that here's this guy still wearing his wedding band by the end of this story. He's gone through, I mean, he's covered in tar and oil and dynamite and C4 blood everywhere and Christmas duct tape on his back, and he's still got his wedding band on and wearing it proudly, you know, as he hugs Bonnie Bedelia at the end of the film. And we still got one more sequence to come, right? And so for me with Wick, I think Keanu Reeves really emphasized for me that brokenness, that separation from the love of his life, this person who actually completed him, and the only way he could be pulled back in was to say, you crossed the line, you killed the one thing that represented everything to me, and you guys are going to go down as a result of it. And we still see the ring as a motif in 4, you know, and the whole, I don't know a whole lot about the cutting off of the finger and Japanese cinema and retribution and vengeance and atonement and all those things, but I know that there is an undertone. Adam, maybe you can talk to that a little bit there. But doesn't he? I can't remember. He doesn't get the ring back in 4, but he comes back for it to the elder, does he not? And the elder says it's gone, right? And that's the end of his life, right? So there's still something there. Clearly, the dog is a motif that continues throughout. There's still something going on there. This desire for what he used to have, and it makes me wonder. And it does leave a little bit of that mystery and that wonder. I kind of wish we knew a little bit more about his wife, you know, and about why did this guy get out? Why did he love her so dearly? How come it went so deep for him? Anyway, those are just a couple of the thoughts around that whole sort of my empathetic response with John Wick. And of course I handle handguns and nunchucks, and I can handle kung fu just about as well as he can. So we are in very similar company. I mean, you've seen me at the Toronto International Film Festival, Steve. I mean, the way I can get an interview, I mean, really.
I've never been impressed more than by your nunchuck skills.
Watch out, Adam, on the red carpet.
Smashing face to face with the podcast.
But all kidding aside, I really think that whole storyline, that little bit of the storyline really humanizes this guy.
Dave, I really appreciate everything you just shared, because you have just you've helped me appreciate the first film more than I ever have.
Nice.
And I love the first film. I enjoy it. Ironically, at the start of this conversation, at the start of the question, the only thing battling around in my head was what I've only ever really thought anytime I've rewatched it is my memory just goes back to when it was released, because it was a quiet release. It was all word of mouth that made it explode.
It's true. It really was a quiet release.
And the word of mouth was what I thought made it so successful was just that it was the greatest elevator pitch, and that it was not the first, but it was like one of the first to really normalize the meta narrative of breaking the fourth wall in terms of our motivation for being there and caring, which was, hey, what if Keanu Reeves killed a bunch of guys because they killed his dog? And I was just like, well, that's just the greatest premise ever. Like, because it just throws away the real motivation. And I'm like, because we're not supposed to care about that. We're just supposed to care about the gun fu. And now, so that's where I had boxed it in my mind. But I mean, you said the sacramental words of Die Hard and brought that into the conversation. And that's top tier. That is what everyone is attaining and reaching for. And I really appreciate what you broke down, because the wife thing to me is so funny, because even though it's there, they've done a wonderful job of it maintaining and being a through line. And I hope they never tell us more about her, because it makes it's that sacred mystery.
They're gonna make her in the mob if they do. They're gonna make
oh my word, that better not be she better not be part of the ballerina narrative. I will be really pissed. But it is that hovering ache and grief, and that is there. And of course the dog is really just the front of that, because the dog is the gift from the wife, and so that's just this. It's like the ring. It's that symbol of their love. So anyways,
the fact that he
appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. I think the fact that he still hasn't taken it off the ring. I mean, presumably how many years have passed? So on some level, and as unhealthy as it might be, he's still committed to this woman. Yeah. Or at least there's still some kind of passionate commitment there that I don't know. I admire it. And I think it ties into the mob-like kind of quality of this institution that they all find themselves in. There's honor, there's respect, there's friendship. It's really kind of weird when you treat somebody like a friend and then you kill them with a large library book. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty crazy, right? But it's got a little bit of that Godfather thing going on where, I'm going to kill you, but I won't kill your wife and kids. Right? Yeah. You're going down, but I'll respect you enough that I'm going to leave them alone. It's just, it's an ethic of a sort.
Well, that's funny. You mentioned the timeline, and that's maybe one of the only questions I don't know off the top of my head. I feel like the timeline is actually pretty tight.
Oh yeah, you might be right.
Between 1 and 4, like, not to diminish your point, I just feel like I don't know. I don't know if they've said it publicly or in the movies at all. Of like between 1 and 4, I feel like it's maybe a year, but maybe it's more than that. I don't know, but I don't know if Steve,
Well, between 1, 2, and 3, they end, like, I think the biggest gap between films is 3 and 4.
It's like weeks, right?
Well, 3 and 4, he falls off a building, and they're like, "Okay, let's get to work." And then we see him fully healed and ready. I love the key. Like, I saw it in the theater, and everybody started laughing, and they're like, "You ready, John?" Yeah. And it's like, okay, movie starting now. He said, "Yeah," and then it's like that. Yeah. You don't need to talk much. But 1, 2, and 3 happen almost instantly after one another.
Yes.
I don't know how long they take, because he does a lot of travel.
Yeah.
But like the second and third one, it's like a moment. It's literally a minute after the second one. But I think between the third and the fourth one, it might be a year or something like that. It is interesting.
I love that the director brings Lawrence Fishburne and Neo back together again, for that whole scene with this. Wow. Well, I mean, he's more than just that scene, but still, I love that they work together. I mean, I think if I knew a hitman well, I think John Wick's the one I want to know. right? He seems to have a certain value about, like, he has ethics. He doesn't, I don't think he's as crazy as this sounds, I don't think he kills willy-nilly. Like, I don't think he's just right. I mean,
Well, if
the
Willy
step.
Nilly is in the mob, he might. But that's
No, I know it's utterly absurd. Like, what's the body count in John Wick 4? It's over the top, right? Anyway, but there's something about him that I think I'd want to call him if I had to call a hitman.
I'm going to add this too because I think for me, speaking personally, one of the things I love about the character, I mean, certainly I love the fact that things like, what do you want in your tombstone? Loving husband. Like, that's what you want? Really? Okay. But there's something about Wick, the thing that I think is most relatable for myself. This this guy, he's looking for more than his wife. He's trying to piece together his soul. And so many of these films, like the second one, the final fight scene in that mirrored hall is a basically a PowerPoint presentation on the soul, and there's light and red, fiery red, and he's caught between two colors. But so much of his character is about trying to find peace.
Yeah, yeah, and it's isn't doesn't Kane actually say that in this film? Is it Kane or is it, I forget who it is, but somebody said that you're looking for your, or I hope you find your peace.
I hope you
Mhm.
find your peace. You're right. You're right. Yeah, and I think, but so much of this character, to me, the appeal of him isn't just that, I got to go back for one more job. Like, I mean,
Right.
we've seen that. And 24 was one of my favorite TV series over the
Yeah.
last 2 decades. I love Jack Bauer for a similar reason, but he was much more, even more so, like, I gotta get back into it now. I get sort of dragged back. But with Wick, I get the sense that yes, he's dragged back in, but he's trying to figure out who he is in the midst of it. And I find that so interesting. Like they have made this film about two things: action scenes and his character. And I don't think it does well one without the other. Like if this was just nonstop violence, like I've seen movies that are just about how cool can we kill people,
Yeah.
but they don't have the character, and vice versa.
Well, and I would say there is a third essential ingredient there that that to me also helps leverage this more than they keep dragging me back in, or I got to do one more job narratives, which we've seen time and time again. And that's the world building. That's the institution, the rules and the rituals, right? There's just this growing elaborate world around him. And so it's not just John Wick being a killer saying, I've got to do one more job, or I've got to do a revenge. There are things that motivate him, either externally or internally, that had everything to do with the rules and rituals he abides by,
Mm.
right? And so therefore there is the personal character and the action and all that kind of stuff, but it's also this, it is this beautiful character development, and as Dave put it so beautifully, in terms of coming to terms with the grief of his wife and his own identity. But the things that keep perpetuating it are these things that he can't turn his back from. Like he can't just remove him. We all say this about whether it's the church or other institutions, like, well, why don't you just leave it? It's like, well, it's his identity, it's his life, it's the literal world around him that he can't escape from it. And that's where we can maybe, when you talk about the ethics of the character, we can let the body count diminish a little bit, because it's not about the body count, it's something blocking him from fulfilling his obligation, right?
Well, and it becomes, Adam, I love it, and I mean, it's a parable, really. I mean, it's borderline fantasy in some respects, and I don't know what the actual literary definition of fantasy is, but I'm sure there is some sort of beginning, middle, end, and certain characters need to die, and there's probably needs to be a happy ending, and isn't it the line, and they all lived happily ever after? Well, we certainly don't end that way in the Wick films, but I do feel like there's this parable-like quality to his character, to the organization itself. I mean, it's I noticed this time too, more of a dystopic sort of edge in 4 than I think I've noticed in the other 3. And I don't know if either of you picked up on that or not, but I thought it was kind of telling. One of my favorite scenes. I mean, so many in the film, and this, by the way, this past summer, we as a family got over to Europe, and I was able to. I drove in Paris, and I drove that roundabout, the Arc de Triomphe, and I thought we were going to die. It was about midnight.
Yes.
And I've done roundabouts in some crazy cities around the world, Cambodia and Indonesia, Jakarta, Phnom Penh. This was madness. And
Yes.
so to see that scene go down was just, this is crazy talk. What is going on? And it's just so beautifully done too.
I'm glad you brought that up, because no joke, I was there. What is this? I was there 2 months ago, and my major takeaway from it was a layover, spending a day in Paris, was it ruined Mission Impossible for me, because I realized that just getting to work on a Monday morning in Paris is you're risking your life, and therefore the stunts that Tom Cruise does driving through Paris and around the Arc de Triomphe is nothing. It's not impressive to me anymore, because I've been there and driven, and what a friggin' nightmare it is to watch that. And to that point, while that scene was going on in John Wick Chapter 4, I was like, this could not happen. Like, it's so the fantasy, like, it just became all the more a fantasy, because I've actually been there, and I'm just like, this cannot happen.
There's no way you're getting out of this circle alive, right? It's
like there's not enough cars. They would all run him over. They would...
Yeah, it's true. One of my favorite moments is where Donnie Yen, is that right?
Yeah,
he's absolutely brilliant in this film.
Best part of the movie.
I mean,
he could.
I mean, I hope they're going to go and do something with him, and they certainly sort of indicate that with the sequence at the scene at the end. But I so love the scene in the church.
Yes,
and that the division between these two guys, the aisle down the church, the candles burning. I mean, it's just gorgeous to look at. But the conversation they have, to me, is a real period. It's a bold. It's an italics. It's can you hear? Oh no, what are you doing? Saying goodbye? No, I'm saying hello. If that's not an existential clue into where this man is from a soulful perspective, I don't know what is. And so he's about the future, it seems to me, even though he's living, it seems, in the past. He won't get rid of the ring. He still wants to say hello. And he says, can she hear you? No, I don't think so. Then why do you bother? Because I might be wrong. Oh, come on. This is that way. I'm getting goosebumps. You're
making me want to run out right now and rewatch it, because that I mean, and again, Donnie Yen, I mean, he won't be, but I deeply wish he could be Oscar nominated for this performance.
Oh, he's so good.
It's so soulful, and no previous character, as much as I love all of the supporting characters that help with the world building, it wasn't until this movie and that character that kind of conversation and exchange could occur. Right, no one else.
You know what?
Out of him.
Yeah, right? I think you're right about that. And doesn't that speak to that honor and that friendship, right, that these two guys have had when we don't know why? They've got a huge amount of history together. There's a ton of respect there, and yet they're basically about to try to kill each other. Right? It's just it's a strange world.
See, you said something interesting there, David, which I think brings up another question. You talked before about wanting to know the story with his wife. Maybe one of the things about this story is we don't need to know all the details of the past. Like, they bring up things, but a guy like Kane, we know they've got an intense relationship. They just told us that. Do we need a prequel where they met? We might get it. I mean, who knows what the Continental's going to be?
Might still get it.
But
that's true.
But we don't need it.
Yeah, we don't need it.
No.
No, there's strength in the mystery, eh? There really is.
Really is.
Well, hey, here's a question for you that's connected, but a little sort of off topic. So I've been doing the 3rd season of The Mandalorian, and I don't know, another episode, I suppose. And I'm a Star Wars nerd all the way. Little disappointed. I won't lie. and it's hard for me to say that, by the way, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm learning too much about the universe,
Yeah.
if that is actually starting to tarnish my what kept me going as a 10, 11, 12-year-old. I was Luke Skywalker for 3, 5, 7 years of my life. So I don't know, is it having an impact? Big question, I know, but we are getting all these details now about the past and about what came before. And now I hear Filoni or somebody, James Mangold's going to go back and do like a 25,000 years ago, like the biblical epic of how the Force started. So it's a related question, but to your point, Steve, I'm with you. I don't think we need to know about Wick's past.
It robs off those kinds of stories, which I'm also a fan of, but like those kinds of stories, they eliminate imagination, right? Because they've answered all the questions. And even for people of faith, like it we think we want the answers, but it doesn't actually help in the end if we think we know, right? Certainty can be a blockade to faith and narrative and pushing the envelope forward, because especially when it's a children there, but even in the case of John Wick, again, like the original premise, like the less we know, the better, because our imagination and our emotions will fill in the blanks, and we will be self-satisfied in that, because we can find ourselves in that, right?
So here's the question: would we have liked John Wick if his wife was still alive and he was still the hitman before he fell in love with her and gave up, and buried all his weapons in his basement? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm not even sure we need to talk about it, but I think it's an interesting question.
I think that's a really interesting question. I think it would be a different experience, because I think what we've got is a man who's trying to make it atone for the things he's done and move forward with the hope that he's lost. And I think that's that would create a very different character if we knew the entire story. It's funny. I want to go back just 1 second. I don't want to talk about Star Wars on this one too much, because I'm sure we could talk about that all day. But it is interesting what you say there about knowing too much. We already kind of had to have that fixed, because we had the original trilogy, and then Lucas, with the prequels, tried to make the Force a quantifiable thing. Like immediately in episode 1, people were like, "Oh, you have a midi-chlorian count. Oh, you have. Oh, some people have this more." And then, hearing after the fact, you hear that his original stories for 7, 8, and 9. I don't want to get into what did happen with 7, 8, and 9, but there was one of the ideas was that Luke was going to shrink down to the size of the midi-chlorians, and it was very science based for a franchise that wasn't.
Right.
And I think there's all that to say, I think there's a joy in some mystery. And when Lucas took that away, it did damage to the legacy at the time. And I think that's why, like there's a reason episode 7 is called The Force Awakens. They had to bring it back. They wanted to bring the Force back to an element of mystery. And I think John Wick has that element of mystery to it. Not quite the same, although it is fascinating. The spiritual elements, and I'm not going to juke it or, take, but they use stuff from all around the world. The scenes in the church are beautiful. You mentioned about being like a big parable. They refer to him as the prodigal in this. They use so many spiritual imagery from across the board, not just from Christian faith or anything. They do it from across the board.
Yeah.
But they've added that element in there into, like you said, this code of ethics, which I think is fascinating. Which begs one question. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, because we're starting to get low on time. What do you think gives life meaning in the Wick-verse?
Yeah. Okay. So
everybody's fighting for those answers.
And this is the thing for me, that to what your point, to answer that question, is to what you're saying, is that I feel like because it is a world of rules and rituals, that it's a world that actually exists within a mysterious, murderous institution, that's what gives it meaning. That's what gives the individuals meaning. But that's also the thing that allows it to not, go too far in terms of its answers and what can like, I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe we will grow bored of this in 5 years, because there's the Continental HBO series, and there's the ballerina spinoff, and then there's the end credit scene. So they are doing plenty to come, and maybe that will spoil this. But in theory, the thing that made me, to what your point was earlier, Steve, like the thing that made me really fall in love with this character in this series was number two, and the world expanding, the opening up to all these rules and this institution, or these institutions, because it expands it to a wonderful and exciting and mysterious degree, and yet it also limits it, because there is the high table, and I even came out of this film kind of like, did he kill the high table? Like, I was like, I actually walked out thinking, like, I thought we were gonna meet the high table, and I thought he was gonna like kill everyone who sits at the high table. And so I was actually kind of left like perplexed, even more so because he dies at the end. I was like, oh, so we don't get to meet the high table. But at the same time, that's satisfying, right? Because that is the roof, that's the ceiling, that's that of the cathedral, right? That's the thing at the top that we can't seem to attain, and that perpetuates the motivation of everything over and over, because that's the thing that provides meaning, is the existence of the high table and the rules that they bestow upon us, which then again is also, to me, the parabolic element of it is, don't go looking for grace in the world of John Wick, because grace is institutionalized, and or grace doesn't exist, and mercy is institutionalized, right? Because you can find moments of refuge based on the rules, or based on, if you throw your hand on the steps of the Continental, they can't kill you now. But finding it person to person is solely, explicitly, left up to the relationship and the respect, shared or not shared, right? So
Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question, Steve, in short, because I think it's probably it would be worth writing an essay on for sure, and something I want to think about. Where does grace find its place in the world of John Wick? Is it within the walls of the Continental? I don't think so, but I think there are aspects of it there. But I think it's rooted in relationship. I think that's where we wind up, and so we're living in a very compartmentalized, legalized world where we really do have a judge and a jury. We have these individual judge and juries that'll blow your head off if you step out of line. Then you got the Continental, who brings down the gavel all the time. I remember that scene, help me out here, but it was 2 or 3, where the woman who comes to kill Wick in the Continental, and there's that great scene where Ian McShane just turns his back and walks away, and the 4 of them execute her there right on the spot.
yeah,
And
that's the first one.
that's the first
one.
that is
Yes.
that is judge, jury, executioner. You step, it's very black and white. There's very little nuance here. But I think what we see is with John, I think we do see the nuance. I think we do see the subtlety. And I think it takes me back again to the church scene where he says, I don't know, but I'm here to say hello anyway. And you know what? You just said I'm going to die, but you might be wrong. And so for me, there is as crazy as this sounds, there's a thread of hope there. And I would argue that probably that's where the grace is, if it's going to be found anywhere. And I think Wick is trying to find his way back home. That's what I think. And I think that's why the ring is so important. I think that's why the dog is so important. And for the time being, it seems like he died in peace. It seems.
Yeah.
Right. On the steps, which, by the way, can lead up or down, which I just also absolutely love. It's just
Well,
so
and
beautiful.
I appreciate that point too, because the grace, I mean, it does. I think we've answered the question, right? The only real grace that exists is in relationship, because from that execution at the end of the first film to Ian McShane, to the manager, extending grace to his friend and breaking the rule, right?
Right,
He
right,
follows the rules in the
right.
first one.
Second
He
chance.
breaks the rule in the second film to extend grace to his friend. He gives him a head start, right? That, I mean, as insane as that sounds, that is the only evidence of grace bound by relationship that exists in this world, right? So
I like the fact that that David, you use the word home there, because I think that's one of the last things he says. Will you bring me home?
yes, yes.
And the
Right.
and the end
I
of
forgot that. Yeah.
and the beginning of the second film, and essentially the first film as well, is the destruction of his home.
Yep.
So what you have a guy who sniffed the air outside.
Right. This was his way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was his opportunity to live a life of love and relationship and a grace-filled life.
Yeah.
And they took it away from him. And now I'm going to do everything I can to get back there. And I was trying to think of something funny I could say about the body count there again, but
no, well put. I
it's
appreciate that.
It's
well
a strange way to get back home, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, with we're running out of time, guys. I didn't, and I can't even. I'm saying this right. I want to do screen it or script it, but we never even mentioned Lance Reddick.
No.
Yes.
I
Such a great actor, such a great character, and such a tragedy.
and what it is, absolutely is. But what a phenomenal final performance or
Right.
farewell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a like this. The
Surreal.
only thing I've ever seen that I can think of like that is Q in World Is Not Enough.
Mm.
David Llewellyn,
Okay.
when he had always have an escape plan. If you remember, the James Bond franchise, Lowers in the Floor, died before it was released.
Wow.
And it's just like, you've got to be kidding. Like, that's honestly phenomenal actor in everything he does. But he died after I saw it, because I saw it before it came
Oh.
through.
Oh, wow.
So when he died, I went, oh, okay.
Right.
But yeah, just remarkable.
Well, he was, for me in the film, what's the phrase? He exudes consistency. Like, he is the guy, right? He'll give you the key, but you better do things as as laid out here in the terms and conditions. Don't screw with this guy. Like, and yet so super pleasant, so super personal, right? Yeah, I loved his character in this film, and yeah, it's very sad that we've lost him.
And you can trust your dog with him.
Yes, there you go.
Gentlemen, this is an obvious one, but we got to do it. John Wick Chapter 4, screen it or skip it.
Well, I'm going to see it again this week, so I'm going to say screen it.
Yeah. Screen it over and over again.
Right. I think we have a new category, Steve.
Yeah.
Screen it over and over. There's got to be a little pause.
You know, yeah, honestly, this is, I referred to this as a party movie. It's a weird way to describe it, but even Winston says it at the end. There's the only reason for Winston to say to John, "Go, just have fun out there," is because that's what this franchise is. And correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like, although the body count has risen exponentially, I feel like this one may be the least violent.
Interesting.
Because it's a lot like it's not as emphasizing of the blood and gore or of broken limbs at the same way of some of the earlier ones, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I mean, the body count, people will probably laugh me into the building for that comment, but I just noticed the difference.
Yeah, they might. Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I would agree with you on that.
Although it does set people on fire, so there's that. I know you guys got to go. I don't want to hold you, but I want to give you a chance to tell people how they can connect with you. So how can people follow you? David, let's start with you.
So how's this? Scott Adkins, Killa, I actually have interviewed on my podcast, Face to Face. Wow. So if and when you get a chance, check that out, face-to-facelive.ca, or my website, davidpecklive.com. It'll all take you to the same place anyway. And we have over 600, I've published over 600 interviews, which is insane. I can't believe that. and we've had some really amazing guests. So please check us out there. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And I'll look forward to coming back on here. I've had a blast. I can't believe we're already done. I feel like we're just getting started. It's like any great conversation, right? And but thanks for having me on, Steve.
Anytime. Thank you, David. And absolutely love your work, love your podcast, and
thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you get up to 1,000. You got to get to 1,000.
That's right.
It's not, you know,
the golden microphone.
5 episodes before.
Yeah, 5 episodes before.
That's right. I'll make sure to invite you guys on. Yeah.
No, and Dave, you and I have just met, and I'm going to be looking up that episode, let alone a bunch of episodes, because that sounds very exciting. And I've just had the privilege of writing just for the last year for Love Is Moving magazine. Steve and I have created the Behind the Screens column, and so Behind the Screens is where we investigate Christ and culture in the midst of a million different things, and the narratives coming at us from screens large and small. And so looking to contribute more and more there for Love Is Moving and Behind the Screens, and down the road, hopefully interviews and more conversations like this with guys like you.
I hope so too. Oh, that's great. I'll have to check that out. Nice meeting you as well, Adam. And again, Steve, thanks for the opportunity. This is for me, this is the stuff life is made of.
I appreciate it. It means a lot. I love our conversations, guys. You're always welcome. A reminder, we will be back next week. A reminder, you can find us wherever podcasts are available. And you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can find us on Apple. You can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. We will be back next week, or at least we are planning on it. We're going to be talking about Air, the film, not the scientific compound. But we will be talking about Air, the story of Michael Jordan signing with Nike. And that's going to be a lot of fun. But thank you again, guys, for coming on. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screen.